Hi everybody, I'm Natalie with Missouri Star Quilt Company, and today I have a great quilt to show you. I'm calling it Springtime Starburst, and I think it's really fun. You can take a look at it back here. It's just beautiful. It goes together really quick and easy, and I think you're going to love it. So let's get started. So to make this quilt, you're going to need one package of 10-inch squares, and I've used Full Moon Forest 2 in True Colors by Tula Pink for Free Spirit Fabrics. You'll also need a print that is kind of an accent print or a focal print, whatever you prefer. And I've used this beautiful honeybee. It's called Shake Your Honeymaker. Super fun. I love Tula Pink's prints, and her names for things are so great. But to get back on track, you need 1.25 yards of that. All right, so you'll need an accent fabric and a background fabric. The background I used is this white. You'll need 1.75 yards of that. And then the Essex linen steel, it's a yarn dyed linen, really beautiful and adds a lot of texture. You're gonna need 3 1/8 yards of that. And that includes your inner border, our 2.5-inch inner border here. You're going to need some outer border fabric, and I used the same fabrics on my outer border and binding as I did for the focal print in the middle of all my little star blocks. So you'll see Shake Your Honeymaker a lot throughout this quilt. But for your outer border, you'll need 1.5 yards, and then your backing, if you're using a 108, you'll need 3 yards. Okay, so let me show you the backing fabric. It's absolutely gorgeous. Tula Pink makes really great fabrics for backing. She blows up her prints and prints them large. It's got this really satiny, soft feel to it, and I just love it. I think they're beautiful. Also, I should mention this quilting because we can see it really great back here. It's called Dave's Honeycomb. It's one of our newer patterns, and I think it turned out beautifully. I love it. All right, let's get started. Okay, so let's make this block. It's really, really easy, I promise. I used a fun focal print on this one, so just a little sneak peek of inspiration for you. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get started by separating our entire layer cake into sets of 2 prints. They can be coordinating, but I prefer them to be a little bit contrasty. That's how I like the fabrics to pop from each other. So we're going to grab those 2 and set them aside. We're going to need to cut our steel fabric into 10-inch squares. And then we're going to need to cut our focal fabric or whatever the accent pieces that you picked for the middle of your squares. These are going to be made into 8.5-inch squares and set aside. So you'll need 16 of these. We've got them cut and set aside. And then you're also going to cut your background fabric into 2.5-inch strips. And we will need some 2.5-inch squares of our steel, which I have right over here somewhere. All right, so from our white strips, we're going to need to cut some subcuts. We need some 10-inch square or 10-inch by 2.5-inch strips. We need some 2.5 by 4.5-inch strips, and I've got a pile of these. And we're going to need some 2.5 by 6.5-inch strips. So those all get subcut from our background 2.5-inch strips. We're also going to need some 2.5-inch strips of our steel fabric. These need to be 2.5 by 8.5. And then we're going to need some squares for snowballing our corners. And you can mark a line or you can use your diagonal seam tape to make your half square triangles as well, to snowball from corner to corner. But we'll get into all of this one step at a time. Just wanted you to have all the measurements laid out. And also, of course, you can consult your pattern for those numbers later. So we're going to take one of our prints, and we've got to decide which one gets to be the star legs and which one is going to be our little corners. So these are the star legs here, and these are our little corner pieces. And they are going to be matching because we're using our whole layer cake to make one block. All right, so let's cut the pieces that we need from this print square. This is going to make up those little corners, and so what we're going to do is cut a 2.5 by 8 or 10-inch strip, sorry, and then we're going to cut a 4.5-inch strip and subcut that into 2.5 by 4.5-inch substrips. Okay. And then we will have all of our cuts done. Finally. I do kind of love that these squares are just big enough that you can mostly cut your peaks, the peaked edges off. So this is a waist piece. You're just going to set this aside for another project. I prefer personally to start with my half square triangles. So I'm going to do that. So we're going to combine this print square with a Essex steel square. I'm going to lie them face to face and draw a line corner to corner. It doesn't really matter, but since my steel piece is just a tiny bit smaller, and really that's just because Free Spirit measures their peaks from the inside, not the outside. So they tend to be just a little bit larger than most other fabrics. Okay. We've done this many times, but I'm just going to keep on doing it. Drawing the line corner to corner and sewing on both sides of both lines. Alrighty. So now we're going to go ahead and do our cuts. And I like to cut horizontally and vertically first and then cut on my lines. It just gives me a little bit more confidence knowing that if something pulled apart, I would be able to continue cutting on the lines because they're still there, and these half and halves are measured but not visible. Not drawn on, you know, no real guideline there. Anyhow. Okay, so we're going to square these to 4.5, and I'm going to use my Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer. I'm going to line up the stitch line on the dashed line on the ruler, hold that in place, and just trim those outer edges right off. I'm going to trim my little dog ears off. Someday I'm going to research how they got that name because it's just weird, but that's for another day. Crazy Natalie gets out on the loose in the library. Okay. Now I've got a bunch of these already squared, so I'm going to just take these two and I'm going to press them. I'm going to move these out of my way till I need them. You'll get your turn. You have to be a little bit gentle with the Essex linen because it has a bit more stretch than your quilter's cotton, but I love working with them. I think they're beautiful. We're going to put the grays together and we're going to make 4 pieces that look just like this. And they will go all the way around our focal fabric. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these. And I think what I'm going to do is just stack them all up like this so that I can get them done efficiently. All right, and one other thing, because my sewing machine doesn't like to start on these 2 corners that are, they're in the corner, they're bulky, your seams kind of all match up, I'm just gonna flip them over and I'm gonna start from this edge that is seam free. because I'll be able to sew off it, and then I won't have to worry, you know, if you don't have one of those plates that has a hole in it, you will sometimes get that fabric sucked underneath the presser feet. So if I flip these all over and stitch from the seamless side, it'll sew right off the edge and I won't have to worry about it. So just a little helpful hint. But do make sure that you're still sewing on the seam in place that you, the place that you need it. I've had to do some picking before, so that's just coming from experience. All right, next we're going to press them, and then we're going to add our 2.5 by 8.5 inch gray strip, and these parts of the block, these units, will be done. It's such a great block. I think I want to make it in so many different fabrics already. Okay. This is a place where if you wanted to press your seams open, you absolutely could. It would reduce a little bit of bulk in the seam up here at the point, but that's entirely up to you. All right, so each one of these is get a 2.5 by 8.5 inch strip right here on this side. So it ends up looking like that. So let me grab a few more of these strips and we'll stack them up and sew them. 3 of these and 3 of these, and one more that rounds it all out. All right, now we'll press these. Sewing and pressing. I do find pressing your seam, especially on the Essex linen, makes a big difference. Or setting the seam before you press, I guess I should have said it that way. Do you know what I mean? Alrighty, so we're going to set these aside with our middle. We're getting most of our components now. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this 10-inch strip and our print 10-inch strip, and we're going to stitch them together, and this will be the beginning of our corner blocks. This is one where I like to go ahead and set the seam and press it open just to make sure everything's nice and straight. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut off 2.5 inch segments. So I think I'm gonna just trim this the tiniest bit so it's nice and straight on that edge, and then go 2.5. And if I keep my ruler line on that seam line, I can make sure that these are nice and straight, and that seam's nice and straight. Looks good. We'll need all 4 of these for our block. All right, that measures out just great. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take these and we're going to stitch our 2.5 inch by 4.5 inch piece to the sides of each of these squares. Okay. It's kind of a little bit log cabin-ish, not really, but similar construction. And I try to keep these going all the same way, but it doesn't really matter as long as your white pieces go on the right way. You're gonna have it will just be a placement of seams, and it doesn't make too much difference where they end up, as long as you get the right shapes. Okay. Go ahead and press these. All right, so now we're going to add our white strips, and we're going to put our 2.5 by 4.5 on this side where it crosses the long seam, the long strip seam, and then we'll put our 6.5 across the top, so just up here. And then if you want to, you can press it. I'm going to finger press this seam because it's easy enough. And then I'm going to add the 2.5 by 6.5 inch strip to this side to finish out this corner. All right, so we're going to repeat that process 3 more times to make the rest of our blocks. But this is essentially the unit that we're working on. The one last thing that we've got to do here is now add a snowballed corner that comes straight out from the print corner. So on this side right here, we're going to grab one of our little 2.5 inch squares. We'll draw the line or use our diagonal seam tape. We're going to stitch from corner to corner right on the line. There we go. I promise you that part gets a lot easier with time. So let me move these out of the way. I'm going to trim off the excess block that I don't need here. and then press these back, and our corner blocks will be done. So let me get the rest of these lovely magical helpers made for me. Okay. Okay, so now we've got all the pieces and components that we need for our block. So we'll put our little focal print in the middle. These little babies are going to make up our legs, so they go all the way around. And they're so cute. And then these guys make up our corners. And they face out this way. Then we just sew this 9 patch right up. There we go. It's gonna be so great. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stitch. Well, I'll do this side first. So I will leave these ones up here and then stitch these just like that. There really aren't too many things that you have to worry about meeting up or losing points or anything on this quilt or this quilt block. It's just, you know, there's a few seams to match up, but you're not really at risk of losing points. It's going to be pretty easy. Our top and middle and bottom. So we'll go this way. I like to do this piecing of the block sometimes without pressing my seams, because that way I can negotiate the seams a little easier and flip them from side to side as needed, and then I'll press the whole thing after. But that's just a preference thing. So if you want to press between every seam, go for it. I salute you. And I give you permission to do whatever you want because it's your quilt. Checking to make sure my seams are going to nest and that they're going the way I need them to go. Alrighty, here it comes. I'm going to give it a press and then we'll see how we did. Let's set these seams so that they're kind of going the way they need to go. And there we have it, our finished block. Yay! So this block measures about 20.5 inches. It's great big, and these blocks are just side by side in this quilt. There's no sashing here. So you can see I've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 across. And then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 down. So this quilt measures 93 by 93. It's nice and big. All right, so we've got a 2.5-inch inner border and a 5-inch outer border. And again, it's 93 by 93. I quilted it in Dave's Honeycomb, and it's super fun to make. I enjoyed it a lot. I think you could do a lot of fun things with this 8.5 square in the middle. I mean, if we're talking about, I've got what if on the brain, we could put a 4-patch in here. We could put a pinwheel in the middle. You could do t-shirts, any kind of fun fabrics that you wanted to focus on. Maybe you have some old wonky blocks that just need a little border and you make them 8.5. They go right in the middle. So many ideas. Goodness, it's gonna be fun. Can't wait to see what you guys make. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on Springtime Starburst from the Missouri Star Quilt Company. Bye. Hi everybody, I hope you enjoyed today's video. We're trying super hard to get to 1 million subscribers, so if you enjoyed it and you want to see more, just hit subscribe and share with your friends and encourage them to do the same, and I will see you next Friday with a brand new tutorial.